All right, we're back with our friend Jack Ford of Europros Collision. We've got Projekt964 here, and although we've done our best to kind of bring the shine back, it needs to go under a little bit more surgery. We've got to repair some things. What are we looking at, Jack?
So what we're looking at here is a typical 964, 993 corrosion issue. These cars suffer in two areas, generally in the rocker area and in the windshield area, and sometimes in the rear glass area. This is very typical for a 964. What happens is the moisture, generally, it weeps down and lays in these corners, and typically that's where they really start rusting the first go round. Second go round is if they've had a front vision put in over the years. When the glasses are cut out, they get a little scratch or a scribe mark, and they're not properly protected, and of course you get years of moisture laying in the channel, and then you end up with this rust issue. So it's very important to find somebody who's competent and understands how to install these glasses in these vehicles.
Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications by clicking on the bell icon and never miss a video. We've got lots of Porsche content coming your way.
The airbag cars were not only roped in, they were glued as well. And then later generation 993, that was a warranty issue with those vehicles when they were new. I repaired those when they were new. They had an issue where the galvanization was delaminating from the steel. So that's another whole discussion. Generally, these 964s didn't have that issue. Most of the time, this issue was inflicted, but this is pretty typical for a 964.
So two things that you said there was maybe one was the design, and
yes,
it traps water down there.
Water lays in there.
If the windshield has been replaced and the scratch wasn't like covered up, and then it just kind of grew from there. So is this like, am I talking about like an iceberg where we're seeing the tip of the iceberg and hopefully it's not as bad underneath?
Generally you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. A lot of cases these cars they've got some age. They've been through several repair facilities in different hands. They've been repaired, you know, as a second hand they have purchased. You know, they look great to the consumer. Consumer gets it, they go to put a glass in, and then all of a sudden they've got this problem. So yeah, like in manufacturing, you have a bare steel chassis, and then obviously they're galvanized, and then they're E-coated, which is like, it's almost like a powder coating process, electrolysis process, very thin, and then a sealer, and then the refinish process. So there's a lot that goes into this. When you put a glass in a vehicle, a lot of times, like your local glass guy, even if you got a little scratch or a scribe, they're just generally using something that's out of a can.
Right.
So it's bare minimum protection,
right.
if it's even caught at all.
And they're not even looking at it from the long-term perspective.
Correct.
They're just putting a fresh glass in, and their tool may have scratched it.
That's right.
Even if they touch it up, it's not like how it was touched up by the factory.
Yeah, because it's a multi-step process at the factory. And like I say, these glasses are sealed and glued in there. So when they're putting the glass in, you have to trim the adhesive off of there very, very carefully. Yeah. So like to see a little scratch, but it only takes one little scratch to break through the surface, and then the moisture, and then it just continues.
And we have a segment on YouTube about windshields and how to choose a proper windshield installer, so check that out. So what are you looking for there?
There's a box in here for the antenna. I'm trying to save this glass.
All right, Jack, so I saw you took apart some interior panels here. Are we gonna try to look underneath this trim and see what's going on?
No, so I was just disconnecting the, there's a antenna box. There's a box that the antenna plugs in under there.
Oh, okay.
So you have to do that first, and then we got to take the trim off for the air duct, and then the wiper arms. And then after that, everybody's got their own technique of doing it. Like I've been doing this 33 years, so like I've been working on these since they were new. So like what I like to do is so I don't chance to take this glass out. These seals are sacrificial, so they're one-time use only.
Are we gonna try to save the glass?
Save the glass
okay.
if I can.
Yeah.
So what happens with a car that's aged like this? They start to a front vision is put together in two sections. So it's got a layer of glue and like an adhesive in the center. That's what keeps it, if there's an impact, keeps it from, you know,
breaking apart.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have an outer layer and an inner layer. Most of the time I'll inspect them, and if they're not white and hazing around the edges, that means that the glass is not delaminating. And these glasses now are like $1,200.
So if it's not delaminating, it's worth trying to keep it.
Yeah, like let's try and save it. Not
Right.
think I can get this one out and get it back in without damaging it. So,
Okay.
That's
But if you were to see
consideration.
a delaminating, now would be the time to put a fresh one in.
Generally, I can get it out. What I can't do is get it back in because they're roped in, and so the glass kind of twists, and you have to kind of slap on it and put pressure because you want them to be tight and snug. So if there's an incident or an accident, yeah, this is an airbag car. So the first gen 964s were not. Then they went to an airbag arrangement. So then the front glass was not only roped in, it was glued in. And I think they decided that probably wasn't sufficient. So what they did is they went to a different style, not rope-in glass in the 993, and it has a channel and a seal.
Okay.
So it's conventional like a current vehicle today where it's 100% urethane in.
So you said the trim piece is sacrificial, and I'm assuming like Porsche Classic still carries them, and you can order these.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna grab the camera and kind of get a close-up shot of everything that Jack's gonna do to kind of get a
It's real
preview.
simple. These just pop up. First order of business is we're going to remove the wiper arms. So it's a real simple process. So you just remove these 13s. There's a little spring washer underneath of there. It's supposed to be. So we'll take that off there. Yep, there it is. So basically you're just going to get a baggie and put that in there. I just grab it and I give it a little wiggle to the right and left, and it comes right off. It's just got some. Uh-oh, I fell in this. We'll get it. We'll lift the hood up and get that. A lot of times these caps are pretty brittle, so you gotta deal with them gingerly. We're gonna lift this hood up and get that spring washer. So I'm gonna remove the screws. There's a series of 5 screws here.
Okay.
Along there, you have to get a long bolt. The vehicle's in remarkably good shape. I see this vehicle's got 36,000 miles. So, and I can see that it does retain the factory Siglet glass.
So in this case, with no delamination, being original glass, definitely trying to save the glass is worthwhile.
Yes. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut along here, and we're going to just stay inside the rubber channel. And then so what I do is I start at the top, and then I get it broke free, and then I put my hand underneath it there, and then I just gradually cut along the seam there, and then once you get the locking strip off the outside, then you can lift the glass out, and then you can peel the inside off without damaging and really getting into the chassis at all. So let's go ahead and get with it. So I'm just going to scribe this right along here, like so. And what I do is I lift that up. This is sealed down pretty good. See, then we can lift that up and just give that a little cut there. And then there you are.
Oh yeah.
You see, this is over 30 years of practice. I've done hundreds of these.
And I see how you're trying to stay away from the metal.
Yeah, stay away from the chassis, because
Yep.
I don't scribe, don't have no chance of scratching the vehicle at all. And you can see it's so old and dry rot, a lot of times you can just pull
Oh,
it
look at
away.
that, it's just coming right off.
Yeah. Generally when they're newer, they don't do that, but nonetheless. So now all of a sudden we can see the corrosion and the areas that we couldn't see that were evident before. And you can see it's starting to break here. See? Same here, we're going to continue on the side. And I just grab a little bit. That's the factory seam. There's a seam there where they put the pieces together. See? And you can see the urethane, you can see the sealer that's put in there. The reason they put that in there is when the Porsche from the airbag, you know, comes, it keeps the glass from blowing out. Because the early cars, they're just sealed on the outside, and then they're just roped in. Like a G50 car or something.
There's definitely a technique to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like when I restore one of these, or these cars have a character. So like, I've been working with them so long, you know.
So this is so dry, it's literally falling apart as you
Yeah.
pull on it.
Well, there's also a seal. You can see it. It's dusted, but there's a seal. So after you urethane it in there, there's a sealant that goes in there as well.
Are modern day car windshields as
Most of them are not roped in.
not roped in like this? Okay, so this is like more the old traditional way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most all early GM cars are like this. I think GM used this process all the way through the 80s for trucks.
Yeah.
So as you can see, if you're not careful,
You could ascribe.
it's very easy to scratch the
Yeah.
chassis all up, and then you can see where the problem arises.
Right, if you didn't care, you could easily just gouge the painted surface and then create an opportunity for future rust.
That's correct. This seal's pretty dry. And I don't believe that this seal's ever been out. I don't think this glass has ever been out.
So back to your statement earlier, if this is original glass, never been out,
That's a good thing.
that's a good thing. But it can
clearly see-
this can still happen.
This can still happen.
This rust can still happen. Here.
So like I say, everyone does this different. So this is just the way that I prefer to do it. You can unlip it, try and push it out from the top. The problem with that is, in my professional opinion, is it increases the chance of breaking the glass. So I like to break the glass free from the bond. So I find the edge of the glass and I just run this right along here. Because there's a rubber channel. It hooks over to the inside of the pinch weld. What I do is I just run along the glass, cut the seal, say very gingerly.
So the glass is your guide mark.
That's right, I just ride the razor blade right along the glass. So this area here is a lot easier when you do it this way because also the channels are up, so you're pushing against the rubber, not against the chassis. All right, so when we get into this area right here, probably about 30 or 40 millimeters right here, there is a wire right here.
Radio antenna?
That's the radio antenna. So what I'll do is I'll just cut, I can see it right there. I'll stop there and I'll continue with that once I push the glass out. Because once you cut that antenna, and you can fix it, it's very hard to fix it and probably not a good idea. So what I'll do is I'll cut along this section and I'll start to push the glass out from the inside.
All right, so it's time to push out the glass.
So once you get that seal broke loose, you can pretty much just push it out.
Oh, look at that.
So I'll push the glass out, and see, this is what I'm saying. When you're cutting, see, I'm cutting into the just piercing the rubber. So there's no chance of disturbing, but you can see. So look right here, Boo. You see where this is white?
That's
Yeah.
the body sealer. So what that means is from chassis flex, that seal is constantly rubbing. You see a track of white right there. All these early 964s, the white, red, and black cars were all painted in a single stage. So they had less material on them, really. So as you can imagine, like you can't really see it, but as the car's vibrating down the road,
It's agitating.
That seal is steady buffering on the surface of the chassis. So what happens is, as you can see here, look how white it is right here, and then look right on the other side of that. See, that's when the rust. Because what happens is it breaks the barrier of the sealer, and then the moisture gets in there, and then it just starts to.
So the seal itself was the abrasion, caused the abrasion on the paint.
Yeah, because you have dirt and pollen and things that are acidic like tree sap, and they're all factors. So you can see that this car probably had sat. You can look down in here, probably sat under a tree or something. And tree sap and leaves are very acidic. So like I said, so we've cut the outside track, and we have scribed around the leading edge of the glass. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open the door, and we're going to apply a little bit of pressure until it wants to pop out. And as you can see, it's coming loose. And you don't want to push it. You want to be very careful with it. So like right here, it's still stuck a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to score it just a little bit more right in this corner. I'm pretty confident it'll break loose now. But you don't want to go too far, because like I say, you don't want to get into the... And there it is. Comes right out.
Just like that.
So now once we get into this section, remember we have the antenna wire on the other side. So you see how easy the glass came out.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I was saying, like I've been doing this 33 years. This is pretty much all I've ever worked on is Porsche. They got a character, you just get to know them. The whole car is like this. All these air-cooled cars are like this. We get people call us all the time that want to do a restoration, and we probably do about 2 a year. We're a Porsche certified facility. That's our main focus, but like I still have a soft spot in my heart. Like I really enjoy working on these early cars and giving back, because people that come with the problems like this, and so like I do a lot of repairs like this throughout the year. But I always tell people, like, find someone who's competent, not cheap. And people, it's hard to be upfront, but like if you can't afford to do it right, like just leave it be, because when you start taking these cars apart, or you end up in situations like this, it can really turn into a mess.
And what's important is that they're competent on this model.
Correct.
Not just general Porsches or
I always
whatever.
Say, like people call for restoration, I always say, probably 7 out of 10 body shops can make a shiny paint job for you. But when they start disassembling it and it's put together with wood screws and Chevrolet bolts, and like when it comes time for resale, it's a huge issue. So right now what we're going to do is, like I said, we didn't score or cut in this area, although you can see it came loose. So we really want to be careful in this area to get the antenna wire out without damaging it, because it's a little black cable. It's very delicate. So basically what I do is I just roll this up and I find the wire. You can see the wire right here. Manny, if you could you kindly grab my knife there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to cut right beside where the wire is. And Manny, if you could kindly hold that glass on the side so it doesn't roll down across the cowl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fingers here and I'm going to lift the seal up. See how easy the seal comes out now. So there's the cut. That's what I had actually cut. So there's no chance of cutting and scoring the vehicle. So basically I'm going to stick my hand. You got to be careful here so you don't get into the dash, or your dad always told you don't cut towards you. Sometimes it's necessary. All right, so now you can see there, and then you can see there's a little hole pierced in the rubber gasket. So that's really important too. A lot of people dink this up when they put a glass in. They try and run this. They try and run this on the outside of the seal, and then within 10,000 miles, the road vibration. What happens is it hacks through the wire, and then the radio quits working. And so basically, I just Go right off to the wire. Cut that out. And like magic, you disconnect it. All right, so now we'll grab the glass. This. The antenna comes right over through the wire. And we have successfully removed the front vision.
Nice job. Okay, so now that the glass is out, you can see the damage a little bit more closely.
Yeah.
What do you think happened?
So we have successfully removed the glass without damaging the glass. So my professional opinion, so like I said earlier in the segment, so when the exterior finish starts to break down and you get into the sealer, you can, it's like a crime scene. You can kind of see. So you see right here where it's white? This is where it's really rubbed, and then look, sure, it's corroded. Everywhere that's happened is corroded. Generally, all the corrosion happens in the bottom because naturally the moisture lays in the bottom. You never see these things rusted at the top. They're always rusted at the bottom. And the corners, in my opinion, always rust out first because the torsional rigidity of the car, this is where it gets the most action as far as it rubbing in the corner, and this is where the most of the water lays. So you see, like, we haven't got into the chassis, scribed it. So this thing, like I was saying, it just channels in there. So it's like a little locking strip that goes around the pinch weld. So we're just going to pull this away. And that's it. Pull this thing off. There you are. So now it's time for the assessment. So this is what I always tell people on the phone. They're like, well, I've got a little bit of rust. Generally, it's never a little bit of rust. What you can see 9 times out of 10, we've actually got a 993 in here now that was a problem, and somebody had improperly repaired it about 5 years ago, and they did more damage than good because they got in there grinding and this and that. So what happens is they take the galvanized coating off, and the first thing they want to do is they want to put body plastic or a filler on top of the bare metal. That's the first mistake. That's your first mistake. They have all these rust corrosion and coatings, and the only way to get rid of the cancer is you have to look at it with a magnifying glass after it's clean. All the black has to be gone. If there is any kind of corrosion, they say, oh, this chemical will lock it down, and that's not the case. You have to clean the metal. The metal has to be cleaned with an acid, neutralized, put a conversion coat on there, and then either acid etched and sealed or an epoxy primer be put on top of there. If there's any kind of pitting and aesthetically you want to make it look better, like, you can put some glaze over top of the epoxy primer, but it needs to be sealed down first. Because when you take these fillers and what have you out of the can, you don't know what kind of moisture is trapped in there. So you're trying to get rid of the moisture, and then you encapsulate it with more moisture. So that's what when people call about these issues. These cars are common for the rust and the door checks breaking out. So I've done hundreds of these. So you just know, you don't know until you get it out. Once you get it out and you can assess the damage, this guy right here, my professional opinion is probably going to need a patch. So this may require having to take the top dash pad out and access it, and take the hood hinge, and take the hood off and the hood hinge out to be accessed on the backside. And this one here this patch can be butt welded in and hand finished, and then protected on the backside, and it'll be a good usable unit again. I've got a customer here now that I started to hit on that had a 993 that had this issue, and took it to someone who was incompetent, and they made a hell of a mess. Now, what would have been probably $4,500 if you just had to paint just the cowl. Generally, these cars are up and over, so there's no breaking point. Depending on the customer's budget, like, we can do a blend here. Single stage is much easier to do that with. Two-stage clear coat, anytime you blend, the UV rays are going to break down the edge of the blend. So generally, you have to take the back blast out and roll the channel, the drip check channel, and paint the whole roof. That gets pretty expensive. This poor guy, he's got to put a cowl in the vehicle. So when you got to put a cowl in, you have to gut the dash, heater, gas tank, front fenders. These fenders are glued to the vehicle. It starts getting in the $10,000 to $15,000 range, like, pretty rapidly. So, like, you have this issue, it's really important that you find someone who's competent to do this. You kind of only want to do it one time. So what I like to do now before I give an estimate is, like, you know, I just get a verbal from the consumer or customer and say, all right, so like this is what you're up against. Immediately I can tell there's several layers of metal here. This is going to require a patch. These other areas here, not so bad. If they're badly pitted in little areas like that, basically what I can do is just MIG weld or TIG weld these little areas up and then metal finish them, and then just metal file it and metal finish those areas. But like, just for the heck of it, like, we're going to pick this up and you can see, so you got a big chunk of metal here that's badly corroded. So we're not going to have to dig very far. And you can see how the moisture, it gets up under. Scrape this away and we kind of assess the damage. So basically what I do is I can tell, see, that easy, I went right through it. So you can see the cowl is completely gone. So in most cases what people will do is they'll just wire wheel that out and clean it up and maybe put a little rust inhibitor or something on there and then cover it over and paint it, and it'll look great for a year or two. But then the problem is, like I always say, like, the glass is $1,200. You got a couple $100 worth of seals plus installation, so you're in this thing for $2,000 or better by the time it's all said and done, plus the repair work, and then in 2 years you're right back. So
do it right. Do it right the first time.
The assessment was correct. It's going to need a patch here. Really, this is not that bad, considering. I mean, I see them a lot worse. But you can see even underneath of the factory seal, like this is the factory sealer. When I scrape underneath of the factory sealer, see the rust is clean underneath the sealer where it's leached its way all the way to the bottom. I'm going to get a close up of this here. So you can see where the corrosion, it's leached its way all the way. And then so the white that you're seeing there is a little residual white. What that is the galvanized. So it's broke clean through the galvanized. You can see how this is kind of bubbled up. Let me scrape this away. See, it's gotten pretty thin there. So generally what I do is I'll take it outside and I'll tape all this up, and then I'll wire wheel all this out with a really aggressive wire wheel, and then I neutralize it with like an acid cleaner and a clean stainless brush. And then I may let it sit overnight, let the acid sit overnight on the pits, and then wire wheel it again. And then you look at it with a magnifying glass, and you can see when all the pits are etched and all the acid has done its work and cleaned out all the metal. At that point, I'll assess like what I'm going to do the repair. Whether I'm going to cut that area out and replace it with a new piece of metal, or sometimes when they're really pitted like this, I'll clean them out. Because like all this rust is full of oxygen, and then so if you try and just weld over rust, what happens is you get a lot of impurities, which they call porosity in the weld. So essentially you've got rust under the weld that's been trapped in the weld. So like I really clean these areas really good, and then I'll weld those up and then finish them off, and then I'll look at them with a magnifying glass, and then maybe put some dye penetrant on there and make sure that there's no holes. It only takes like one little pit or one little hole to pop. And then you're right back to square one a couple years later. So it's pretty intense to do this, to do it correctly. It's very labor intensive, but it can be done correctly. You shouldn't see any problem. I mean, nothing's forever. There's generally no warranty on rust. I mean, the factory went through all these processes, but if it's done correctly, like it can last another 20, 30 years, no problem. And you had made a point earlier that this car had been kept outside. So tree sap, pine needles, and any kind of decay that lays in these channels is like awful. It's awful for these cars. Even though they're galvanized, these cars are very good as far as corrosion. They really didn't rust. I think Porsche used to keep one outside of their headquarters that was bare metal and galvanized to show, how good they were. But like I said, it's the road vibration and the rubber seal, over years rubbing that just rubbed through the surface and created this